Hello and welcome back to the home of the Ghost Owl, and continuing our Warhammer The Old World content and the main rulebook review, we're now on to the unusual formation section. So the common formation we've seen is the close order and the combat order and marching column stuff. We're now going to look at something that we see on less commonly, but on certain specific units. So first up is adopting and changing those formations. So all units must have a formation, and formations a unit can adopt are identified on their unit card. Units with more than one formation may choose during deployment which formation they're in, and then they may change it by reforming during the game. So, open order formation. Units in open order look the same as units in close order, with the key differences being in how the unit moves and interacts with the terrain. And I've specifically chosen the image on the right hand side there of a unit which there could be, depending on the rules of the unit card, and I haven't delved into the Lizardman unit card, but as an example, that could represent both close order formation or open order formation. They would look the same. So it will be dependent upon your opponent having to detail to you if they're in close order or open order, and if they're even allowed to be in an open order formation. So units in open order are arrayed in exactly the same way as units in close order and bound by the same rules. Okay? Now, if you have open order available, you're highly maneuverable, which means quick turn. After moving, unless you charged or were fleeing, a unit in open order may pivot about its centre to change its facing by up to 90 degrees. Also, if you're in open order, units do not become disrupted by difficult or dangerous terrain. So open order, some quite good benefits in there. As I say, it's going to be key in understanding which units are in open order, which units are in close order. But having that option for open order does seem to give you some quite nice mobility benefits, whether it's moving around the terrain or whether it's just moving around the board and changing facing, for example. So unit shape is the same as for close order formations, and you gain the same bonuses, and as such, units can be said to be in combat order or marching column, using the same rules for close order formations. So if you're deeper than you are wide, you're in marching column, so you can be in open order marching column, and if you're wider than you are deep, you will be in open order combat order. And you'll get the same bonuses. So, to be honest, so far, looking at it, if you can take open order, you're pretty much going to always want to be in it. But let's keep going. And there you go. So, yeah, there is no downsides to being in open order. It's basically the same as combat order with some extra mobility in there. Now, next up is going to be what I would call a more unusual formation, which is skirmish formation, but it's one that you can see quite a lot. And again, the unit you can see on the right-hand side there, yes, I know they're on round bases, don't shoot me, but that's a good example of how a skirmish formation could look on the tabletop. So, units in skirmish formation do not consist of rigid ranks and files, and instead move as a single loose group or line. Now, models in skirmish formation do not have to be in base contact, but must be at most 1 inch away from another model of the same unit. So, similarly arrayed as you can see on the picture on the right-hand side. Now, coherency. A unit of skirmishers must end their move in coherency, coherency being that they're at most 1 inch away from another model. Casualties cannot be removed if it would break coherency, so you cannot remove models from the middle of the unit. If for any reason a unit in skirmish formation loses coherency, models must be removed until a coherent unit remains, with the removed models being considered to have fled the battle. So it's in your interest as the owning player to remove models from the edges. So, facing and line of sight. Units in skirmish formation do not have flank and rear arcs, with all arcs considered as front arcs, including 360-degree vision, which is really, really nice for things like shooting, charging, and so on. So yeah, these units can therefore declare charges and shoot in any direction. And other units can see through units in skirmish formation, as long as individual models can still draw line of sight. So as long as you can still see through the models at the target, then you can see it. And that's to say, but it still works on true line of sight. So if there is a model physically blocking the way, then that will be an issue. But yes, that is the basics of skirmish formation. Now, movement and maneuver. Each model moves as an individual, so the unit does not turn, it does not wheel, or otherwise, though it may reform to adopt another formation if that is possible on the unit card. And each model is able to move in any direction without penalty, long as you maintain the coherency. Now, moving through skirmishers. Now, other units cannot move through skirmishers, so despite them being in this kind of, with lots of spaces in between, you still cannot move through them, though you can flee through them as normal. Now, skirmishers do enter the tabletop as reinforcements, and they enter in skirmish formation. They will enter the battlefield, so they are placed so that each model is within 1 inch of the battlefield edge. Okay, skirmishers and shooting. Individual models within a unit of skirmishers do still block line of sight, which includes line of sight of other models within the same unit. Enemy units shooting at a unit of skirmishers that consist entirely of models with a unit strength of 1 suffer a -1 to hit modifier. So you're looking at those smaller models. So skinks, for example, that we just looked at. If all the units skinks that have a unit strength of 1, you're going to have a -1 to hit those if you're shooting at them, which is really quite nice. So lots of good benefits for having a unit of skirmishers. Skirmishers cause panic as normal, though, should they be destroyed or break and flee. Skirmishers cause panic in other skirmishing units they flee through. So if a skirmishing unit runs through another one or flees through another one, it will cause panic. However, skirmishers do not cause panic when fleeing through units in close order, open order, and other type of formations, which is quite interesting. So actually, some pretty good benefits for being in skirmish formation so far. Now, skirmishers in combat, how's that going to work? So, when in combat, skirmishers do not remain in their usual dispersed formation. Instead, they will form up in base-to-base contact against the enemy unit to form a fighting rank. Skirmishers that charge or are charged must always form up once the contact is made. Any skirmishers that cannot make base contact must form up into ranks behind the fighting rank. So there is going to be none of these big long lines of skirmishers that can't make base contact and get those extra attacks. So that is a bit of a downside. And skirmishers will remain in close formation until they are no longer in a combat at the end of the combat phase. Okay, skirmishers and rank bonuses. Units in skirmish formation cannot claim rank bonuses in combat. So by dint of that, skirmishers are not going to be great in combat unless you're either trying to do some sort of movement disruption, move blocking, or anything else, but they're not really a unit that you're going to be sat there going, I need to get this unit in combat. This is more something that, they can shoot in any direction. They've got some pretty good mobility. And, going into combat is really kind of more like a last resort sort of thing. Skirmishers and disruption, so enemy units do not become disrupted when engaged in their flank or rear by a skirmishing unit. So even if you're trying to use those skirmishers to hit a flank or rear, again, you've got to think of the value of doing that. You're not going to cause disruption. How many casualties will you get from it? So again, in terms of skirmishers, we've had a lot of good things from skirmishers. This is more the negatives, and the negatives really are around combat. And then characters joining skirmishers. Characters may only join a unit of skirmishers if they are of the same subcategory of troop type. This is an exception to the normal rule for characters joining units. So if your skirmishing unit are regular infantry, your character must also be regular infantry, for example. Okay, so now skirmishers charging skirmishers, which is really quite interesting because everybody's all over the place. So when skirmishers charge another unit of skirmishers, each model is moved individually, starting with the model that is closest to the charge target. So the charging model that is closest to the charge target moves first. Once that first model is moved, the remaining models will move in order to form a fighting rank. Now, models that do not have sufficient movement to reach the fighting rank must form up in ranks behind. Once the charging unit has completed its move, the charge target will then form up against the enemy units in the fighting rank. So you've basically formed up in this sort of close order formation with a fighting rank, and now the unit that's being charged is going to do the same up against that unit. So no model in the charge target can move further than its move characteristic, and any model that cannot make base contact with the enemy unit's fighting rank must form up behind, which then would be like a normal thing. So, initially, it looks like it could be a bit chaotic, but it's actually quite simple in terms of skirmishers charging skirmishers. Overall, skirmishers clearly have value, but again, how much value will depend upon how good they are at what they're trying to do. Nice that they have the -1 to hit, so if you're using them for sort of like harassing fire, a good counter to them is not going to be shooting back at them. It's going to be actually getting them in combat, chasing them down. Bearing in mind they're going to have quite good movement as well because of the way they move. They don't have to do those maneuvers such as, turning and all that sort of stuff. So, they've got good mobility. They're probably going to be good harassing, good on the flanks for harassing fire, maybe looking at hunting down war machines, putting fire into enemy missile units who are going to be in more traditional formations, such as like Bretonian bowmen, for example. Skirmishers definitely have value. I think that the problematic thing with skirmishers is their inability really to hold any board control, because if you get them in combat, they're going to be in trouble. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the unusual formations. Now, these are the unusual formations that are generic ones in the book. There are other formations that are out there, but they're army-specific and will be covered in the army-specific rules, and we'll look at them when we go into the faction focus. So we've covered, you've got your close order, you've got your open order, and you've got your skirmish formation. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more content, hit that subscribe button. It is totally free for you to do, and it takes literally a few seconds, but it is a massive, massive deal for me. So I really, really do appreciate it, and thank you to those that have done it already. It is much, much appreciated. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very, very soon.